Ron, will you lead us in prayer? 351 and we'll go to our Heavenly Father in prayer. Troublesome times are here, filling men's hearts with fear. Freedom we all hold dear, now's at stake. Humbling our heart to God, safe to the chasing rod. Seek the way pilgrims trod, precious away. Jesus is coming soon, morning or night or noon. Many will meet at noon, trumpets will sound. All the dead shall rise, righteously in the sky, going where no one died, heavenward bound. Troubles will soon be over, happy forevermore, when we meet on that shore, free from all care. Rising up in the sky, telling this world goodbye, over we then will fly, glory to share. Jesus is coming soon, morning or night or noon. Many will meet at noon, trumpets will sound. All the dead shall rise, righteously in the sky, going where no one dies, heavenward bound.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for this opportunity for us to come here this midweek for a Bible study. We pray, Heavenly Father, for those that are not with us this evening. We pray due to illness that be your will, allow them to return back to us. We pray for those who may be traveling. We ask you to keep them safe and allowed to come back to us. Heavenly Father, we ask you to help us now. Put aside distractions of everyday lives, for our minds and hearts and your word this evening. Pray, Heavenly Father, everything is done here this evening. Well, please in your sight. And most good in your kingdom. Please give us our sins.
I'm just little.
Blank pages in between every two.
All our cities.
She feeling better?
Yep. Not great, but I've eaten 76. Yes. Yes. But he, remember how good he played that day? He's like that. Then he started singing it backwards. I know what you mean.
You want to have a blank sheet? You want? Yeah.
You don't want. I have. I don't know that I've ever wrote
Money today now.
I think right. We'll be great.
One way or another. All right. 2 Kings chapter number 12.
Second Chronicles chapter number 24. We'll look at 2 Kings chapter 12 as we've been studying from Kings first, and then we'll consider a couple of things out of the account of 2 Chronicles about King Joash. Thank David for taking the class while we were out of town. It seems like it's been forever since I've been up here singing last week and gone 2 weeks before. So it's been a little while since we've studied. Start out by reading a passage from 2 Kings chapter number 19, verse number 12, I'm sorry. Church, you want to start for us?
2 Kings 12. In the 7th year of Jehu, Joash began to reign. In the 40 years reigned he in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Zebia. There we go, that's pretty close. Of Beersheba. And Joash did that which was right in the sight of the Lord all his days, wherein Jehoiada the priest instructed him. But the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and burnt incense in the high places. And Joash said to the priest, all the money of the dedicated things that is brought into the house of the Lord, even the money of everyone that passes the account, the money that every man is set at, and all the money that comes into any man's heart to bring into the house of the Lord, let the priest take it to them, every man of his acquaintance, and let them repair the breaches of the house, wheresoever any breach shall be found. But it was so that in the 23rd year of King Joash, the priest had not repaired the breaches of the house. Then King Joash called for Jehoiada the priest and the other priests and said unto them, why repair ye not the breaches of the house? Now therefore receive no more money of your acquaintance, but deliver it for the breaches of the house. And the priest consented to receive no more money of the people, neither to repair the breaches of the house. But Jehoiada the priest took a chest and bored a hole in the lid of it, and set it beside the altar on the right side, as one comes into the house of the Lord. And the priest that kept the door put therein all the money that was brought into the house of the Lord. And so when they saw that there was much money in the chest, that the king's scribe and the high priest came up, they put up in bags and told the money that was found in the house of the Lord. And they gave the money being told into the hands of them that did the work, that had the oversight of the house of the Lord, and they laid it out to the carpenters and builders that wrought upon the house of the Lord, and to the masons and hewers of stone, which buy timber and hewn stone, to repair the breaches of the house of the Lord, for all that was laid out for the house to repair it.
Eric, you'll read.
Albeit that there were not made for the house of the Lord bowls of silver, suffers, basins, trumpets, any vessels of gold or vessels of silver, of the money that was brought into the house of the Lord. They gave that to the world, and therewith the house of the Lord. Moreover, they reckoned not men, into whose hand they delivered the money to be bestowed on the workmen. They dealt faithfully. The trespass money and sin money was not brought into the house of the Lord. It was the priest. Then Hazel went up and fought against Gad, and took Hazel, set his face to go on to Jerusalem. Joash, king of Judah, took all the hallowed things that Jehoshaphat and Rome and Ahijah, his father, the kings of Judah, had dedicated in his own hallowed things, and all the gold that was found in the treasury of the house of the Lord, and in the king's house, and sent it to Hazel, king of Syria. And he went away from Jerusalem. And the rest of the acts of Joash, and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? His servants rose and made a conspiracy to slew Joash in the house of Milah, which goeth down to Syria, where Jehoshaphat, the son of Shemaiah, and Jehoshaphat, the son of Shomer, his servants spoke to him, and he died, and they buried him with his fathers in the city of David. And Amaziah,
Very good. Thank you very much. Question number 1. Jenna, you want? All right. I was run out, so y'all did well. Thank you. Number 1, is the person named in 2 Kings 11:21 and 2 Kings 12:1 and 2 the same person? 11:21 says, 7 years old was Jehoash when he began to reign. 12:1 says, in the 7th year of Jehu, Jehoash began to reign 40 years and reigned in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Ziba. And Jehoash did that which was right in the sight of the Lord all the days wherein the priest instructed him. Same person? Alright, what about verse number 19? And the rest of the acts of Joash and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? Is he the same person? Alright, so we can be assured that in this particular reading here that the name Jehoash and Joash are one and the same. The Bible flips between those, and in 2 Chronicles chapter 24 it describes him as Joash as well, but it is the same person, the one that was rescued from Adaliah when she killed all the sons of the king, and he was raised and brought up and put on the throne at the age of 7. And so all the discussion that's going on in these particular chapters right here is the same person, so there's no confusion in that right there. Question number 2, how long did Jehoash reign? Verse number 1. 40 years, all right? So he was on the throne for a long time, from 7 to 47. All right, and then question number 3, what was the factor that caused Jehoash to do what was right before the Lord? Verse number 2. All right, who was Jehoiada? All right, he was the high priest at that particular time. We see that he had a big influence upon Jehoash. What it reminds me of as far as our study together is looking at it from both directions. Is there somebody in particular that we think about or that we know that has a great influence on us as far as how we live for the Lord or not for the Lord? There are people in our lives that have great influence on us. And this young boy, at 7 years old, had a man who took him and set him on the throne and protected him and raised him up and guided him and directed him. He looked up to him. And so he was a faithful man. How many faithful or good kings are there in the southern kingdom? Anybody know? Not too many. All right, there's more than in the northern kingdom because there ain't none. All right, can you name them, Kurt? All right, name them.
Asa, Jehoshaphat, Joash, and Hezekiah.
Wrong. Asa, Josiah, Hezekiah, Joash. Huh?
Joash is moderate.
He's a moderate, but he's listed in the good kings.
Asa, Jehoshaphat, Hezekiah, and Joash are good ones.
All right, so
And then the moderate ones are Joash, Amaziah, Azariah, and Joash.
all right. So if you look at it from the standpoint of good and bad, you have good, bad, and somewhat okay. All right, but he does not fall. Although it says in verse number 2. Joash did that which was right in the sight of the Lord all his days, wherein Jehoiada the high priest, or the priest instructed him. So he was of a mindset when he had somebody that would hold his hand and walk with him or support him, he would do good. I guess that comes to another point as far as our lives are concerned. Is there somebody that we have to have beside us before we're willing to stand up and do what we know is right? You know, there are a lot of people that will walk that way. When they're with certain people, they don't have a problem doing what's right. But when they're with other people or not with those people, then they have a problem like that. And Jehoash was that way. He needed to have somebody there to support him. He didn't have the internal fortitude or the strength of character to stand by himself. And we'll see how far off he gets when he doesn't have somebody to help him along that way. Any comments about that? Number 4, what remained in Judah despite the good leadership of Jehoash? Verse number 3.
High places.
All right, the high places. What were the high places? All right. Places where there was idol worship. I think I read in one of the commentaries that probably was not any idol worship, but they remained places where people would go to worship, and they would worship there, even Jehovah God. Now, what was wrong with that? Or was there anything wrong with that?
Was it the place designated?
All right, so it wasn't the designated place. They were to worship at the temple, do the sacrificing there, and so they were not doing it according to. You can get rid of the idol worship and try to do things according to God's word. If you don't go all the way, then you're not going to be acceptable to God. And that's kind of what this is teaching us right here. Is they left some room, some wiggle room as far as being completely obedient to God. And there's no such thing as getting by with a little wiggle room as far as obedience is concerned. Any comments along those lines?
It was also set up as a place to worship idols. It's kind of, if you worship God there, we worship God anywhere, I guess. But there especially doesn't make sense with what it was set up for.
Okay, so it was a false place or a false system there, and you were trying to kind of go over into take what you knew to be right and go into the wrong place, and that's, you can't do that for sure. Number 5, what 3 places did Jehoash determine to get money to fund the repair of the temple? Verses 4 and 5. 3 things or 3 places or 3 different contributions that he sought after in order to be able to pay for the repairs that he wanted to make to the temple. I think specifically it's in verse 4. It says, all the money of the dedicated things that is brought into the house of the Lord, even, and the first one there says, even money of everyone that passeth the account. Anybody have any idea what that might mean? You've heard of the temple tax? When you reach the age of 20, when you became that age, then you paid a temple tax as a part of the support of the worship and the things that went on in the temple. So that was the first one there. The second one said, all the money that cometh into any man's heart, that was a free will offering. And then the last one was the money that is brought into the temple itself. There were 3 different ones that were laid out. How many different ways do we have as far as support of the Lord's church today? Where's the money come from for the repairs of the Lord's church? Free will offering. We don't have a temple tax. We don't have anything like that. I thought it was kind of interesting. I talked to Nana a little bit about her and Tanya went to worship Sunday morning and went into a place that had Church of Christ on the door and ran into a very unique situation there as far as things were going on in the discussion about different things as far as was going on with the worship that were not quite or weren't the way that the Bible described it, but one of the things that they did see on the way out was the fact that they were going to have a yard sale at the church. What's the name of the church, Nana? Kingston? Yeah, Kingston, which is a larger congregation. What's wrong with that? If our kids want to have a yard sale and raise money to support the Lord's church, how do we describe or how do we tell them that that's not scriptural or not right? How do we describe that to them, or how do we defend what we're doing as far as not doing that? All right.
So,
Do you really?
yeah, I know exactly how they are too. That's a lot of their issues started in youth. And their youth minister that they hired was bringing in videos and stuff in the youth classes, instrumental music, a lot of things. And I've been there for worship years ago with college friend that lives in there. Active members in that church. Yeah, so my friend, his grandfather actually quit going there. He started going to West End and Knoxville rather than going to Kingston because of how far they went away from it.
But they could have a separate yard sale.
Yeah.
It's not like in relationship with the church and give them proceeds. They're on their own individual.
Right. You would not advertise it as money that's going to the Lord's church for a youth retreat or anything like that. There's nothing. Yeah. Yeah. It's your money to do with what you want after you get it. But if we stick a table out here and say there's a yard sale next to the sign, what's wrong with that?
Church paid salary.
Yeah. Is there anything wrong with it?
Sounds good.
Right. But
Y'all just making things difficult. If the money's going to go to church one way or the other, why can't you just do it?
all right. So how would we say, or how would we defend free will offering? What would we tell our kids?
We have direct example of how Christians would raise money. We don't have example of them selling their stuff in a church effort. Although you could say they went out and sold all their possessions
And gave it to the church. Yeah.
We don't know how it was advertised. Their stuff, like.
Get your land here.
Church of Christ. All right. 1 Corinthians 16, 1 and 2. What's it say? Yeah.
Did you hear that?
What did he say?
He said, if you want to study your stuff, I know a guy.
I don't know about advertising in the church. We'll find a verse on that one too. All right, so anyway, 1 Corinthians 16, 1 and 2 gives us the direct example of how it was to be done, authorized by the Holy Spirit through Paul. Upon the first day of the week, let you lay by and store. So that's the way that we do it. Why would that be the only way to do it? It didn't say don't. Not to. Can't have no bake sales according to what verse? Can't have no yard sale according to what verse?
God doesn't necessarily authorize based on what he doesn't say you can't do. The illustration has been used where if you say at a restaurant, or this is a bad example in today's time, but you see a sign on the door for the restroom that says men, but it doesn't say no women. Or women doesn't say no men. It just says this is the women's restroom, this is the men's restroom. But we know based off common sense, again, a bad example today, without things that have gone.
Common sense is no longer law.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. All right. Is there a biblical illustration that we can point to that shows the law of the principle of silence of the Scriptures? Leviticus 10. Nadab and Abihu. God had explicitly told them to take fire from off the altar and use it. And what did they do? They got something else and used it. And what happened? God burned them up. If we don't do the way that God says do, He's not going to burn us up in this day and age. But the law of exclusion by the silence of the Scriptures, when you're given a direct command, that excludes anything and everything else. You can also
look at what it says. You can't add to or take away from that. silence the scriptures. If there's something I would silence it, I can't use my own opinion and add something to the scriptures. The same is true with how we conduct the Lord's Supper, how we conduct our worship, how we conduct ourselves. I can't add to, make an addition to the worship of God that goes against the example that we have set.
We have in society today, I guess it's true always, that, feelings are what it makes us feel good, or we feel like we're doing things for God and trying to show our love, but obedience is better, or obedience is more important than feelings as far as that goes. And so we have to be very careful of that. We've always heard the illustration as well. What kind of wood did God tell Noah to use? Did he use oak? Would that have been being obedient? So we can teach our children, and we can teach others using the scriptures and the examples of the scriptures, as well as direct command, how to do it. So that's what we want to understand here. He had, in the Old Testament, he could use this. This was something in a completely different, under this completely different dispensation. Any comments or other ideas along those lines? For how long did the priest fail to repair the temple as directed by Jehoash? 23 years. How come he didn't figure it out before 23 years was up?
Must not have been the
That's not good. Or just, he's a very patient man, maybe. Don't know really, but that seems like a long time. If there's a problem in the church, how long are we going to put it off before we deal with it? 23 years would be a pretty good.
We also don't know how long and when he gave that order. He could have given that order in his 22nd year, and then the same order was given.
Okay. All right, I read it to mean that it was 23 years, but it may have not.
How old was he when he took the throne?
7.
Did he give that order when he was 7? I highly likely, but he may have given it in his 10th year, maybe in his 15th.
All right, go again. All right, we can go with that. Anyway, it was a long time before that they had not acted upon the directions of the king. Can we look at anything as far as making personal application in the church with that? Do we have opportunity, or should we be careful that we don't disregard the directions of the king? We know what we've been told to do as far as the commission is concerned in our life and things like that. So we can't put things off that are directed to us. There is authority there. Did his age have anything to do with his authority? No. More than likely, Jehoiada was for a great while, the power behind the throne, and he was the one that was directing things, but still, the crown itself was the power that whoever was behind it was using to direct things. And so there are no excuses. Age has no bearing on it whatsoever as far as their disregard for what was said. 7. What was done because of the failure of the priest? Verses 7 and 8. Take a pay cut. All right, well, they just, the job was taken away from them. They were fired, basically, is what it looks like. They were given a job, collect the money, fix the temple, and they did not do anything. So he comes, he says, why haven't you done it? All right, you're fired. These people are going to do it a different way. And so, if we don't take care of the Lord's work, will we be fired? Possibly. I'm reminded of what Esther was told. If you don't rise up and do, you were put in this place for this particular reason. If you don't do it, God will find another means to do it. And you'll be in the same boat as the rest of us as far as being a Jew. So if we don't handle it, God will take care of it. But we need to be very careful that we're taking care of what we are supposed to as far as our responsibilities as far as spirituality is concerned, with our family, with our friends, on the job, in all of those situations. He fired them and devised a different plan. Is there going to be a different plan from the church if we don't do what we're supposed to do? But for those who fail to live up and fulfill their role as a responsible and faithful Christian, yes, there are accountability that's going to be made. There is no second or plan B as far as the church is concerned. If we don't do it, it won't be done. And all this trying to work together with denominations and doing things to try to make it fit together won't work. The church is set up solely to do the work of God, and there can't be any shorting out of the way that God has set it up. There's not going to be a plan B, and we can't set up a plan B as well. Comments? How did Joash determine to collect money to repair the temple? Verse number 9. Big piggy bank. Cut a hole in a box and set it by the altar. Could we get a box and put a hole in the box back and collect money for the Lord's work? I think we've done it before, haven't we? I know Bob Bryson used to have the little cans that he'd put in the classrooms and let the kids for missionary work. They would put the money in the cans and they would collect it and support, do what they could to support the missionary work in Panama and Central America. So it's a free will offering. Yeah, I probably would think that it might be best to take that and add it to the collection as far as that goes, and you can just set that aside for that. But it's a free will offering there. On the first day of the week, you've got to be real careful about that. Any comments? 10, 9. Who was in charge of counting the money and delivering it to the workers? Verses 10 and 11.
Scribes and the high priest, wasn't it?
All right, the king's scribe and the high priest, two people. What were their positions? One was religious. All right, so we had a political or civil individual, and we had a religious or spiritual individual. Is there any thing that we can draw off that? Is there a connection between the secular and the spiritual for us today? The separation of church and state. Yeah.
That's not how God designed it.
No, there's not. We are separate individuals. We can't interlink with anybody, whether it be another religious body or another secular body. We're separate. We cannot. How could they do it back then?
It was a theocracy.
Okay, so it was set up that way by God. That was the way that the system was set up to work. So you had the political and the spiritual intertwined, working together within the Jewish system. So that's not an example for us.
I believe that the civil is supposed to be influenced by the religious body. That's God's original design and government.
And
there should be an working. The government should be working for the benefit of the religious. The religious should be holding to making that government, if it is a democratically run government, should be designed, or they should be pushing for that government to act accordingly. But that's not democracy is an exception more than a rule in the history of the world's governments.
it's hard. It's a very fine line to go between, as a Christian and as the church, to try to stay focused on our mission as Christians and as the church is to do what? Save the lost. That's the one and only purpose that we have on this earth. Abortion. Mothers Against Drunk Driving. You know, there's all kinds of issues within the world as far as people who are in deep trouble and need help, and there's political issues that need to be fought against and stopped because they're immoral, and God hates all sin and wickedness. But where's the line where we go across and start fighting a particular social issue as opposed to trying to save the lost? We've got the world, society, the government. Nobody else is in the position to save anybody in the world. We're the only ones that can do that. The church is the only one that can do that. And when we dilute what we're trying to do, and I'm not saying that you don't stand up or don't participate in the sense of helping out when you can in some social issues, moral issues. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying that we've got to be very careful that we're engaged and focused on that, our number one priority, which is to do everything we can to save ourselves and others. And that doesn't leave a whole lot of time for anything else. Sometimes when you look at it from that standpoint, it feels like you may be a little bit unbalanced as far as your mindset is concerned, because there are so many things that take our mind or problems in the world that need to be dealt with, but it's not unbalanced. What is a fan? A fan? Yeah. That's short for what? Fanatic. We have to be fanatics about Christianity and about saving souls. And if you look at people who are truly fanatics, they are focused and consumed with whatever their particular special interest is, and they don't deviate from that. And that's kind of what we've got to be as far as our Christianity is concerned. Any comments along those lines? Number next. What does the Bible say about the workers on the temple? Verse number 15. All right, they were faithful, gave them money, and they knew they were going to do what they were supposed to do. That should be an adjective or a phrase that describes everybody in here and every member of the Lord's church. You can be dependable, you can be counted on, you can be faithful, and don't have to worry about you. When you've been given a responsibility, and it is your responsibility, you're going to take care of it. And there's not anybody that has to come behind you, look over your shoulder, or they don't have to worry about it not being done. That's a lost characteristic to a great degree in our society as well. You look at people on the job. I can jump from one job to another as quick as I can brush my teeth nowadays, and so they don't work because they feel like, I don't like what you said about me, or I don't like how things are going, so I'll just leave you high and dry, and they're out the door just like that. And integrity is a big part of that. Do you do it because of what you're doing? Are you doing it because of you or because of the Lord? The Bible teaches explicitly that we do it as if we're doing it unto the Lord. Any comments along those lines? 11. What was the money not used for the temple repair? What was done with the money that was not used for the temple repair? Let's just skip that one. That's all right. All it says is it was all used, huh?
It was a trespass and sin.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. All right, yeah. I just couldn't get my question out there. All right. Any ideas about trespass and sin offering? What's the difference? The commentary, I think it was Albert Barnes, pointed back to Leviticus 5 and verse 14, specifically talking about the trespass offering. What it did is it delineated between a sin of ignorance and a sin of commission, where you knew you were committing a sin, and the trespass sin was when you were not aware of what you were doing in the sense of sin. So when using it here as a description here, the trespass was something that you didn't know about. You sinned and you became aware of it, whereas the other one Good possibility.
Five or six different types of
Different kinds of ways of sinning. Yeah, the offerings are different ways for different things that were wrong, or some offerings were Thanksgiving, or different things like that. So, and it might be good to look at the different types of offerings, because it would highlight for us things that we could offer as far as our worship to God, not in the sense of sacrifice, but what they were made aware of in those offerings.
I think that that's things that are still important to God.
Absolutely.
For us to keep our mind on them.
Yep, absolutely. Number next, who came to fight against Judah? Verse number 17. All right, the Syrians, Hazael. How did Jehoash stop the invasion of Judah and Jerusalem?
Precious things.
All right, so sacrifice those things that were God's, or given to God, or devoted to God, to prevent a secular or a cultural or physical problem. Can you see a point that might be made in that as far as our lives are concerned? We have to be very careful that we don't sacrifice the spiritual for the physical. And a lot of people do that. Give up their religious or spiritual life to satisfy somebody or something in a worldly sense. 13, who killed Jehoash? I don't need the names of those people who were serving him. All right. Probably won't have time because it's 10 till to look at 2 Chronicles 24, 13. Let's go ahead and turn over there real quick. 2 Chronicles 24. Beginning of verse 13. It says, so the workmen wrought the work, and the work was perfected by them, and they set the house of God in his state and strengthened it. And when they had finished it, they brought the rest of the money before the king and Jehoiada, whereof were made vessels of the house of the Lord, even vessels to minister and to offer withal, and spoons and vessels of gold and silver, and they offered burnt offerings in the house of the Lord continually all the days of Jehoiada. But Jehoiada waxed old and was full of days when he died, and 130 years old was he when he died. And they buried him in the city of David among the kings, because he had done good in Israel, both toward God and toward his house. Now after the death of Jehoiada came the princes of Judah and made obeisance to the king. Then the king hearkened unto them, and they left the house of the Lord God of their fathers, and served groves and idols, and wrath came upon Judah and Jerusalem for their trespasses. Yet he sent prophets to them to bring them again to the Lord, and they testified against them, but they would not give ear. And the Spirit of God came upon Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada, the priest, which stood above the people, and said unto them, Thus saith God, why transgress ye the commandments of God? Why transgress ye the commandments of the Lord, that ye cannot prosper, because ye have forsaken the Lord, he also hath forsaken you. And they conspired against him, and stoned him with stones, at the commandment of the king in the court of the house of the Lord. And Joash the king remembered not the kindness that Jehoiada his father had done to him, but slew his son when he died. And he said, The Lord look upon it and require it. And it came to pass at the end of the year that the host of Syria came up against him, and they came to Judah and Jerusalem, and destroyed all the princes of the people from among the people, and sent all the spoil of them unto the king of Damascus. For the army of the Syrians came with a small company of men, and the Lord delivered a very great host into their hand, because that they had forsaken the Lord God of their fathers. So they executed judgment against Joash. And when they had departed from him, for they left him in great diseases, his own servants conspired against him for the blood of his sons Jehoiada the priest, for the blood of the sons of Jehoiada the priest, and slew him on his bed, and he died. And they buried him in the city of David, but they buried him not in the sepulchres of the kings. It goes on, and we've already looked at those names in verse 26 of those who killed Jehoash. But this just gives us a little more information about Jehoash as far as his death and what happened there at the end after Jehoiada died. And it's interesting to note that after Jehoiada died, what do we know about the relationship between Jehoiada and Jehoash?
Joash did all that Jehoiada had instructed.
All right, so Jehoiada was the influence on Jehoash to keep him faithful to God and doing the right thing before God. What happened? Who approached Jehoash after Jehoiada died? Verse number. (17). The princes of Judah approached him, and what did they do? Well, they did obeisance to him. What does that mean? All right. I would say more along the lines of they were ingratiating, buttered him up because they wanted to do what? Verse number 18. What did they do? They went back to worshiping idols. They were not fully committed to the improvements or the religious changes that were made by Jehoash in repairing the temple and getting rid of those things that were wrong as far as religion was concerned. But all that was done under the influence of Jehoiada, and when the influence had died, that they wanted to go back to where they were, and so they came and said, this is what we want. And so he wasn't strong enough to stand up against them, and they had, basically played up to him, and so they went right back to it. Is that anything like what goes on today? All the time, absolutely. People, will, rather than doing what's right, standing up when the pressure's on, whether it be pressure for bad or pressure for good, they crumble, and the truth is no longer important to them. So that's what happened to Jehoash. Any questions or comments about that? What kind of king was Jehoash? Moderate. Okay. All right. Big, moderate, weak. All right, good to see you. We're going to have an invitation here in just a minute. We need a song to sing to encourage ourselves to think about our spirituality, our relationship with God. You got a number? Have number 570. $674. What is it? Huh? 674. Announcements that need to be made before we extend the Lord's invitation. I think everybody is familiar with the situation as far as Sister Betty Hall has passed away. We're going to meet tomorrow as far as making arrangements for the funeral and what's going to be done there. And we'll make everybody aware of that as soon as we know something about that. Sister Betty was a great lady. She loved the truth. And she loved this church. She will be missed. Continue to pray for those who we mentioned from time to time as far as our sick are concerned. Brother Dan Payton, I think Kurt is going down to see today to Saturday, so send him my regards and family as well on that. Tanya, not feeling well. Robertson is not. Roberson's sick. Continue to pray for Bobby. He works on his medication. Right. The Dorses, Trina, and Glenda have gone to Mississippi, so continue to remember them in their prayers. So I think they'll be coming back Saturday. Anything else? Remind everyone of the get-together, the Hillcrest Friday night, August the 4th, which is Friday night and Saturday, August the 5th. We're going to have a group to go. Hope that you all can be a part of that. I think it would be good. The subject title is Totally Committed. They will be providing ice cream supper Friday night along with the lessons. They'll be providing meals throughout the day on Saturdays. Let's see if we can't have a large group to go and encourage that and encourage them as well. Sunday we'll be getting together the Lord's Day for Bible study and worship at 9:30 for Bible study and worship at 10:30. Hope you can be here for that. Bring a friend if you can. Anything else we need to make each other aware of at this particular time? All right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else? Number 674 will be the invitation song. I want to speak for just a minute about the last part of 2 Chronicles chapter 24. We didn't get an opportunity to look at that. We did read it for just a minute, but thinking about Jehoash, the subject of the individual, the subject of our discussion tonight in Bible study, the Bible describes him as a man who did good in the sight of God. That's found in 2 Kings chapter number 12, about verse number 2. But in my mind, and in the mind of a lot of people, he was a very despicable man. He changed completely from following God and the influence of others who tried to encourage him along those lines to become a man who did some very horrible things to those people who did their very best to help him. Joash was of the line of David. Adaliah killed all the descendants of David trying to take over the southern kingdom. Jehoash was spared as a baby. Jehoiada, the high priest, was the individual who took care of it for 7 years, who hired or lined up all the soldiers to protect him, setting them in particular places, and did everything that he could to save this young boy and put him in the position where he was supposed to be as king. And after this man died, at the age of 130, Joash turned on him and killed his son. He'd done all these things for him, helped him all the way through life, and then when he was gone, what did he do? He didn't care what had been done for him. He didn't care what who Jehoiada was, or who Zechariah was his son. Zechariah said something that he didn't like, and so he just turned on him and had him killed. It reminded me how easily it is for us to forget how well we've been treated in life. Not only just by people in life, There have been people who have helped you and I all the way through life to try to encourage us and to help us. I can think of people even that were part of this congregation that we've helped and assisted along the way in times of trouble. And then they turn their back on us and say horrible things about us. People can be very cruel. People can be very heartless because they forget the good that has been done to them. Are we that way? I want to read something to you. Isaiah chapter 53, beginning verse number 1. Who hath believed our report? And to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of dry ground. He hath no form of comeliness. And when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken and smitten of God and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray, and turned every one to his own way, and the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. He is oppressed, and he was afflicted, and opened not his mouth. He was brought as a lamb before the slaughter, as a sheep before her shears is dumb, and he opened not his mouth. He was taken from prison and judgment, and who shall declare his generation? For he was cut off out of the living. For the transgression of my people was he stricken. And he made his grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, because he had done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him, and he hath put him to grief. When thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed, and shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. He shall see the travail of his soul, and it shall be satisfied. By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he hath poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors. And he bare the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. How easily it is for us to forget what good things have been done for us. The greatest thing that's ever been done for us was done by Jesus Christ. And that great sacrifice that he made for us upon the cross for our sins. Are we like Jehoash and just forget the good that was done for us and walk on our way when somebody says something that offends us about how we should be living and what we should be doing? We need to be very careful. God gave the very best for you and for I. Jesus paid the ultimate price so that we might go to heaven. Let's don't forget what was done. Let it be a motivator for us to do what we need to do in order for us to make it to heaven. Whether it be becoming a Christian or repenting of our sins. It's easy to forget. God help us not to forget. But even more important, when we do realize that we're in the wrong, God help us to have the courage to make the right decision and do what we need to do. And tonight, if you need to make the decision to become a Christian or to change your life in obedience to Christ, please do it now while together we stand and while we sing.
There's a great day coming, a great day coming, there's a great day coming by and by. When the saints and the sinners shall be parted by him now, are you ready for that day to come? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready for the judgment day? Are you ready? Are you ready for the judgment day? There's a sad day coming. ready for that day to come? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready for the judgment day? Are you ready? Are you ready for the judgment day?
Hope the rest of the week goes well for you. Be dismissed with prayer. Take it to you next prayer.
Our God, our Father, that was the all that say those words of the word, God, we pray that this turn into you, say the word, and always keep your goals. Father, especially if you go about to save others. Well, Father, those that are lost loved ones lately, especially now the homeless family, be with them, grant them understanding, and not the rest of it all, Father. Just do it, say those things there. Most people this time, Father, knowing that you to be able to with us. Well, Father, those that we mentioned others that are struggling, that have been sick and been out, those who also call to check on them, make sure that they still know we do care. Just have to pray in Jesus' name.
Did not make mention of Tyler's grandmother.